Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented as always by Full Press Coverage. All-Star Weekend is officially upon us as the NBA is going to take their annual break. And this All-Star Weekend should include some cool festivities to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the NBA. Just like they did with the 50th anniversary of the NBA, if anybody remembers that. I know I do. I know Sap does. There's going to be a lot of legends present, some ceremony celebrating the people who made the list. I know not everybody can attend, and some people, unfortunately, are not with us anymore. But that's going to be a central theme around the All-Star Weekend in Cleveland. Besides that, though, Sap, they are doing, still the traditional All-Star game and three-point contest and dunk contest. They're mixing up the skills contest a little bit. But what are your overall impressions of All-Star Weekend? Are there things that they need to fix about it? Is it good as it is? What do you think?
I think it's grown a little bit stale, Jed. I think, first of all, the dunk contest, which back in the 80s was the highlight when you had Michael Jordan and Dominique Wilkins, and even before that, Dr. J. You had the biggest stars in the league showing up for the dunk contest. LeBron James has never participated in the dunk contest. I don't know how he would do in that. I mean, his dunks in games are more powerful and awe-inspiring than, say, creative. Generally, the best dunkers to me are the 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or Vince Carter, guys that literally like fly through the air and aren't quite as powerful as LeBron. So we don't see the established stars in the dunk contest. Now, if we had our way, obviously, first of all, Zion Williamson would be healthy. I think he'd be magnificent in the dunk contest. Again, though, a big, powerful guy. Anthony Edwards is a guy that you'd love to see in the dunk contest. But oftentimes it's just like unknown players who go out there and they're fabulous, but it's like, who are these people? Where it had a lot more traction when you had Jordan and Dominique and all those great players back, 30, 35 years ago. Certainly Spud Webb winning in 86 is one of the most memorable because Spud Webb was 5'6", or D Brown winning in 1991 at 6'1" and pumping up the Reebok sneakers. Those were really, really iconic moments. Now it's like four dudes that we barely know are in the dunk contest, and it appears that every dunk has been done already, and it doesn't really wow us like it used to.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true about the dunk contest. And honestly, Sap, your guy ruined it. LeBron, he was he was supposed to, be the heir apparent to Jordan and win the dunk contest, and probably would have, but he never has competed in it in his career. And so I know Skip Bayless, all these years later, still gives him a hard time about that. So I blame LeBron for the lack of stars in the dunk contest.
Sure. Well, you know what? It may be said tongue in cheek, but it may also be accurate. I mean, if LeBron's in there, then you would think other stars would come along to compete against him. And why hasn't he wanted to be in the dunk contest? I mean, Skip Bayless's theory is he doesn't want to lose and embarrass himself. I don't buy that. I just think that LeBron's always kind of looked at himself as more than a dunker. That, passing is his best asset out on the court, and that he didn't want to be that. Maybe he wanted to be a little bit different than Jordan and Kobe in that aspect. I think
he's never done the skills competition either, Sap. Why hasn't he done the skills competition?
Maybe he's busy making business deals at the All-Star game, right? He's trying to secure more business deals.
That's called tampering, Sap. That's what he's doing.
Well, we saw that a few years ago with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, two max contracts, and they ended up in Brooklyn shortly thereafter, or LeBron doing business deals to create wealth to buy a team at some point. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that we haven't seen LeBron in the dunk contest, and he's not going to start doing it now at 37 while he's, nursing a bulky knee. But I think that's lost a lot of steam. The 3-point contest, I think, is still pretty good. The only problem, Jed, is the 3-point shot is so prevalent in the NBA that it doesn't really wow us either, even in these contests. Again, I'm the old guy. I remember when Bird won it in 86 when he was still wearing a warm-up jacket. Guys didn't take 12 3-pointers a game. Bird, who I think if he played in today's NBA would be ridiculously efficient as a 3-point shooter. But back when he played, he'd take maybe 3 or 4 a game at most. So the 3-point contest was something that was different than the game. Now there's so much 3-point shooting in the game that I think it also cheapens the 3-point contest. But what other events can you come up with? I mean, the skills competition, you can only do so many things with that. What are you going to have, a 3-on-3 with I think we've had some shooting exhibitions, right? With like a male player, a female player, a celebrity. Like I think you're running out of ideas, and they're kind of stuck with this now because it's become a 3-day weekend. I tell you this story all the time. I attended the '82 All-Star game at Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey. So 40 years ago, we drove down on Saturday morning, and there was a shoot around. Saturday, the Western Conference would come out for an hour. The Eastern Conference would come out for an hour. They opened the locker room, and we got to interview the players, whichever ones we wanted. That was it for Saturday, and then we came back at 1 o'clock for Sunday's game, and then that was it. It was, shoot arounds on Saturdays, a couple of parties, festivities on Saturday night, and then the game on Sunday afternoon. Now, the players can't wait to get there. You got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe even stay an extra day because the post All-Star break part of the season doesn't kick into effect till next week, Wednesday or Thursday. So it's this long drawn out event, which I think is the one All-Star game in the 4 major sports where the players actually look forward to it. Like we see what happens in the Pro Bowl. No one wants to go to that thing.
Right.
Hockey, they fine players if they don't go, but for the most part, they'd like to get that time off. And baseball, they'll play 2 or 3 innings and get the hell out of there before the game is over. But in basketball, these guys really look forward to it, to the point it almost feels like they're more interested in this than playing on their own team. And we've seen players, Jet, miss like the last 2 games before the All-Star break and then play in the All-Star game. Didn't Kemba Walker do that a couple of years ago, or Kyrie done that?
Both of them did that. Yes, both.
Yeah, that's kind of that's not good. That's not good for your team.
That might be happening with Zach LaVine this year too.
That's never good. I'm sorry. I mean, if you're paying someone $35 million a year and they can't play the last 2 regular season games before the All-Star game, but they can play in the All-Star game, I know if I was an owner, I'd be kind of pissed at that. I think at some point we're going to probably do a podcast just dealing on what's wrong with the NBA and what might turn some fans off. That's probably one of the things. And I'm never that guy that's the old 58-year-old guy yelling at the clouds that says, back in my day, this is how it was done. But that does not give a good look to the league when players are taking time off before the All-Star break, playing in the All-Star game, and then missing the next 2 games after the All-Star break because they, aggravated their knee like Kemba Walker did a few years ago. That's not good.
No, it's not. And, that's what Adam Silver, does his NBA State of the Union basically during All-Star weekend, just like Roger Goodell does his NFL one during the Super Week leading up to the Super Bowl. And he was talking about some of the stuff that, I think aggravates fans. And so that's certainly one of them. And I think that's a good idea, Sap, for a later show. So, stuff that we could, if we had commissioner powers, could fix in the NBA.
Sure.
But as a whole, I agree with you that the players look forward to it. They certainly don't take the game super seriously until the last, 2 minutes of it. But I think they like the camaraderie of being, they're all friends. We've talked about this before, with the exception of, the international guys who didn't grow up playing AAU. They have a little bit more of a competitive edge, which is such a difference from what it was, 10, 20 years ago, where the international guys were looked at as the soft guys and the guys coming from the US were looked at as the tough guys. Now it's kind of the opposite in a lot of ways. But the players like to be there because it's an honor and it boosts their ego. They make a little bit more money because it's in their contracts, and they genuinely all like hanging out with each other, it seems like.
Yeah, and as you said, it's good for sneaker deals too, right? I mean, if you got a big sneaker deal with Nike or whoever, there's bonuses tied to if you make the All-Star team or not. We know that players get bonuses if they make first, second, or third team All-NBA. They watch that closely. Remember a few years ago when Klay Thompson did make third team All-NBA, it cost him $25 or $28 million, and he was pissed about that. And rightfully so in that sense, because now we're talking about dollars and cents, but it never looks good when a player comes out and goes, geez, I wasn't third team all NBA. I'm really upset. And if you're more upset about that than losing in the playoffs, then that's not going to sit well with fans who live and die with these teams. So there's a lot that can be addressed at the All-Star weekend. And again, I think that's why your best bet is to bet that Giannis is going to win MVP in every All-Star game, because no one told him to not play hard. I mean, look at last year. What was he? 17 of 20 from the floor. And
I think perfect. He didn't miss. I think he was 17. He didn't 17. Miss. Yeah.
Right. And I remember going into that, we gave our picks. I said, Giannis is going to win the MVP because he's the only guy out there that is treating this like it means something. Everybody else is, laughing and doing whatever. And I think we've seen Russell Westbrook win the MVP several times because he still plays his ass off in the All-Star game. He's not made the All-Star team this year, deservedly so. So I think that's what you'll see. Yeah, you'll see. I think Luka may, want to light it up a little bit because he's really starting to play well after a slow start. But the game is still fascinating because the skill level is just ridiculous. I mean, you get to see Steph Curry, hit 40-footers. You get to see LeBron make crazy passes and all of that. But there are some stars that are out. Notably, Kevin Durant will not be playing in the game. But yeah, I think it needs some change. It's kind of grown a little bit stale with the days leading up. I still think the game's pretty darn good, but the 3-point contest and the dunk contest, I don't know how you tweak it other than if you can try to get more of the stars into the dunk contest. I think that would give that more cachet.
Yeah, that would the 3-point contest I still think is pretty exciting, even though, certainly you're right. The novelty of it is not the same because you see it so much. But it does come down typically to the last round. So that's exciting in and of itself. Yeah. The dunk contest too, Sap has taken a hit, not just because of the lack of star players, but because the judging is just not good. And it seems like so arbitrary. It seems like they're not noticing what some dunks are really good and some are average. And they're giving some 10s that don't deserve it. And then there was that Dwayne Wade controversy a couple of years ago. So yeah, I don't know. I could kind of do without the dunk contest. I'm obviously still going to watch because, I live and breathe this stuff, but it's certainly not the same. If you could get stars in it, it would change it. Even if they're doing dunks you've seen before, it would change it because the competition between stars would inherently attract eyeballs. And as far as the game itself, Sap, we don't have to beat this to death because we've talked about it before on the show. I've proposed, and I think you agreed with me, that you change the format to a US versus the world format. And I think that would do gangbusters. The issue with that obviously is that messes with the selection process, and the selection process has to do with is tied to players' contracts a lot of times. So as of right now, you can't, but it would be a much more competitive game. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, sure. I mean, you'd start off with what? Embiid, Giannis, and Luka would be 3/5 of your starting lineup for the world team, right?
And the Joker.
And Jokic. Yeah, the Joker. I mean, how's that for a front line? The Joker, Embiid, Giannis, Luka in the backcourt with pick one other guy that, it could certainly play. Hell, you could put Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving on the world team because they were born in Australia, right? Whoever's Andrew Wiggins from Canada. So, yeah, you could definitely put together a world team that would be very competitive.
Gobert is French.
Gobert is your backup. Yeah, you get some big guys. And look, if Giannis is on that team, I'd bet that team because, again, he'd be the one guy busting his ass out there. So that I think that would be fantastic, but that'll get pushed back at some point, though. I think in the next collective bargaining agreement, the commissioner, the owners, and the players are going to have to sit down and go, we've had it good for a long period of time, and it's the best league to play in as a player without question. But let's not get too far on this. With what Ben Simmons pulled in Philadelphia and what James Harden pulled in Brooklyn, that just doesn't fit well. Like, you don't see that in other sports. I get, quarterbacks are going to move this off season, but it's not as easy as what Harden and Simmons just pulled off in getting traded for each other a week ago. I think that becomes a major turnoff. The fact that the regular season is minimized, that players aren't playing a lot of games. I mean, I'm fighting with people who are telling me that Kevin Durant's the best player in basketball. I'm like, how can Kevin Durant be the best player in basketball when in the last 3 seasons he's played 71 games? Now, I'm not holding that against him that he missed an entire season with the Achilles, but how can you say that Kevin Durant's better than Giannis, who's played 102 more games than Kevin Durant? Playing is a big part of this, right? Showing up and being out there every night is part of what makes you a great player. And again, Durant was injured. I get that, but we see so many players who are just out for long periods of time. Here we are with Anthony Davis out yet again for 4 weeks with the Lakers. That really hurts the sport, whereas in football, which is, again, a collision sport, we don't see the devastating injuries as much. It's weird to say that, right? Like especially with the quarterbacks, because again,
that's protected. The key. That's the key.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if Brady got hurt and missed half the season, and Rodgers is out for half the season, or Mahomes, there's a problem there. But yeah, the quarterbacks you keep healthy, and those are the key guys. And again, it's a different sport. Basketball is the most star-driven sport of all of them. It really is. I mean, football. Tom Brady, whether he retires or not, the ratings are going to still be through the roof next year. But if LeBron and Steph Curry decide at the end of this year to retire, the ratings would take a hit. We saw that when Jordan retired. We saw that when Kobe retired. We saw that when the Lakers weren't in the finals or when the Cavaliers weren't in the finals, wherever LeBron was playing. You see a big hit. The ratings were not very good last year with Milwaukee and Phoenix. Fascinating finals, win 6 games, kind of new teams, new stars. But, people like to see the established stars like LeBron or Steph Curry, whoever, Kevin Durant. So football will survive that. But, yeah, it's tough when you buy tickets to see the Brooklyn Nets come to town and, well, Durant's hurt and Harden got traded and Simmons isn't back yet and Kyrie decided to take the night off and, Patty Mills is the best player that Brooklyn's trotting out there, and God bless him, but that's not going to really hold my attention or get me to the arena. That is something that the league has been dealing with for about a decade or maybe longer. And I remember talking about this with you about a decade ago when San Antonio was famous for a lot of the load management. And I was like,
right.
You've got a national game in November. You're not a month into the season, and Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker aren't playing in Miami against LeBron, Wade, and Bosh because Greg Popovich has a hair across his ass. And Kawhi, because Popovich has a hair across his ass.
Who was like 22 at the time.
Right. Who's still on load management because Popovich has a hair across his ass. So, if I'm a Miami Heat fan, I go to see LeBron and those guys, but I'm paying good money to see the Spurs come in, and they're not the Spurs. That's a real problem, and I think that's something they're going to have to address. The other thing about the All-Star game, Jet, that I want to get your opinion on, is it too late in the season? I mean, we're 60-odd games into the season. There's only 6 or 7 weeks left after this All-Star game. Is it too late in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be certainly closer to the midway point. It's now always in February. When was the 82 one, Sep?
I believe, if I remember this correctly, I believe it was the very end of January or the very, very early part of February. Now, they don't want to obviously go head to head with the Super Bowl because that would be insane.
Yeah, they would get 3 people who'd watch it.
Right.
You, me, and somebody else.
Yeah, and a couple other people. Yeah, Bill Simmons. But why not play it the week before the Super Bowl? And I know the Pro Bowl is there and whatever. But now the Super Bowl this year was on the 13th. Why not play it February 6th? It would be 2 weeks closer to the middle of the season. It's late in the season, and by then you get a lot of injuries you're dealing with, and it's almost like, it's All-Star weekend. I don't know, maybe play a little bit early. I don't think you want to play it in January because then, it's getting closer and closer. Again, you're competing against football, which in 82, football was becoming king, but it wasn't this powerhouse that it is now. It's
right. That's what's become, Sap, the problem and why they push it so late is blatantly It's only because of football. So it makes sense, to have the break closer to the midway point for the, the players' rest and just as a stopping point. But it's a business and they want to get the most people to watch it possible. And if they go up against football on a Sunday, they're never going to. If they go up against college football on a Saturday, they're never going to get the ratings. Yeah. So they've almost been forced into putting it where it is now.
Right. Or do you have it on a Thursday night? That doesn't. And now it's not All-Star weekend. It's All-Star weekday.
So I don't know if there's anything they can do about it from a business standpoint.
No, just hope that the NFL doesn't move all the way to President's Day weekend for the Super Bowl because then they'll be playing this thing almost in March.
So I mean, the NBA has almost been put into a corner here with it, and you're totally right. It is too late in the season, and I'm sure the players would like a break a little bit earlier. But I think everybody understands, football is a Goliath, and if you go head to head against it, these players aren't going to be making as much money. The league's not going to be making as much money. They have to pick their spots. Mm-hmm. That's just sort of the nature of what football has become. It's an incredible, well-oiled machine, despite the fact you have owners, paying to lose games, and you got, teams having 300,000 emails that need to be hidden by the NFL. It's, it doesn't matter. It just keeps right on rolling and making money and getting 100+ million people watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah, too big to fail. The NFL is too big to fail. They could not screw this thing up. They could try, and Lord knows they have, but you cannot screw up the NFL. It's too big to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. But Sap, since we are at the All-Star weekend and it is a break, even though it's not the midway point anymore, like you said, we've gotten 60 some odd games from all these teams. So I think it's a good time to take a look at where the teams stand and where the MVP ladder stands and sort of give our top 5 teams and our top 5 MVP candidates. So, Sap, let me ask you, what would you like to do first, the teams or the players?
Let's do the players.
All right, let's do the MVP ladder, Sap. And I think it's a fascinating race this year because it's really neck and neck. I tell you, it feels like every game it's almost changing. And so I think you have a damn good race. And it really does go to me. You could go more than 5. But let's do it in descending order, Sap. Who do you got as your 5th?
At number 5, I had Chris Paul. Now his numbers aren't MVP level, but someone has to be given credit for the Phoenix Suns being the best team in basketball. 48-10. I mean, they were on a pace to win 66 games. At a time, I didn't think anybody was going to win 60 games this year. And they're coming off a tough finals loss in 6 games to Milwaukee, a pretty short off season. I thought that they were going to be a team that would finish 5th or 6th in the West, and they'd kind of scale back a little bit. They're better this year than they were last year. So I think Chris Paul should be 5th in MVP voting. And Monty Williams, to me, is the leader for coach of the year because he took a team that lost a tough final series. And normally when that happens, the next year you're in a fog and you kind of underperform. They're overperforming, but I've got Chris Paul at number 5.
I think, that's certainly, it's a good choice. And I think, Sap, that sort of speaks to how good the year has been in that, like, they have been, the Warriors have been fantastic. They have the second best record in the NBA. Sorry, I was talking about the Suns. The Suns, rather. I don't know. I was thinking about Steph Curry for a second. The Suns have the best record in the NBA, 48-10. They've really have just ripped off wins, like huge win streaks all throughout the season, and you can still kind of only put him 5th because there's so many good guys, and really, Sap, like I said, I don't remember an MVP race where you could say, all right, here's 10 guys. They all kind of have a legitimate argument. I mean, it's crazy. So Chris Paul is certainly a good choice at number 5. For me at number 5, Sap, I am going to, I don't want to agree with you. So I'll just remove Chris Paul from my list just because for the sake of argument, and I'll say Steph Curry, who's having a
good choice too. Yeah.
A fantastic year. That's why I was sort of thinking of him too. The Warriors 42-17, having a great year. Steph Curry, as he always does, is having a great year. 25, almost 26 points a game. Sap broke the 3-point record this year, as we talked about earlier in the season. 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Had to play, the bulk of the year without Klay Thompson, who is back now. And I give Curry a lot of credit for the emergence of Andrew Wiggins. I know he was on the team last year, but I don't necessarily think of Curry as, a distributing point guard, though his assists are pretty good. But because we've talked about this before, right? He's so easy to play with. I think that also is in the locker room too. And I think he's given Andrew Wiggins a lot of confidence. So as odd as it sounds, because of how well Andrew Wiggins has played, I feel like that's elevated Steph Curry's MVP case, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely makes sense. And that's what it's about. It's not just about numbers. You can't just say, well, this guy is averaging this. I mean, we saw Russell Westbrook average a triple-double, win the MVP. I don't think he deserved it that year, but when a guy averages a triple-double for the first time since 1962, when Oscar Robertson did it, he's going to win the MVP. And of course, Westbrook's done it 3 other times since, unfortunately not this year with the Lakers. Yeah. And the same thing with CP3, right? With Chris Paul, I think he makes Devin Booker better and DeAndre Ayton better and the rest of that team better. And that's what Steph Curry does. Could you imagine a backcourt of Steph Curry and Chris Paul? I mean, it wouldn't be the biggest backcourt ever. It'd be a small backcourt. I think it would work fabulously.
Right. It's interesting because they do it in different ways though, right, Sap? That's
exactly,
how they make, like, Chris Paul is the exact prototype of what a point guard is supposed to be. If you look at the dictionary definition and what, Dr. James Naismith was probably envisioning, that's what Chris Paul is. And, he's a distributor and he's going to play hard-nosed defense and he's a leader. And Steph Curry is all about, the spacing he creates and sort of that positive attitude. And Chris Paul is going to get in teammates' faces. Steph Curry is not that at all.
Nope.
And I think one of those. I think that's what's worked for Andrew Wiggins. We saw what didn't work for him, which was Jimmy Butler's leadership style in Minnesota kind of made him crumple. And so different players respond differently. Obviously, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton have responded really well to Chris Paul's type of leadership. Maybe they wouldn't respond as well to Steph Curry's. I don't know, but I think Curry deserves a lot of credit, and he's not somebody that I typically sing the praises of, but I didn't think Andrew Wiggins was ever going to be after he got traded was ever going to be this good. I mean, I obviously was extremely high on him coming out of the draft, and something that Chris Paul and Steve Kerr and the Warriors have done have unlocked him a lot more. And so I really give Curry a lot of credit there, Sap. Who do you got at number 4?
I got Ja Morant. And again, Memphis is the biggest surprise in the league this year. They have the 3rd best record, but they've also gone 11-3 without Ja Morant. Now, that's no knock against Ja Morant. It's more than Ja Morant is the reason for Memphis playing so well. But this guy is just playing out of his mind. Defensive end, I mean, he's had some blocks this year that looked like he was playing on a 9-foot rim. There was one block he had on a fast break where he just was 2 feet over the basket and caught the ball, almost like it was an alley-oop. We know what he's doing on the offensive end, and he plays so hard. And he's another guy I think at the All-Star game is going to play his ass off. Right. He's not going to take well to, this is the All-Star game, Ja. Just go slowly. He's not going to buy into that. So I have him at number 4. And I know a lot of people, including Kendrick Perkins, as recently as a month ago, had him number 1.
Yeah, Kendrick Perkins has 50 different number 1s this season.
He does. That's true about Kendrick. Yeah. Perk likes to put a lot of people up at number 1 at some point in the season.
Yeah, love Perk. His MVP ladder should not be considered, definitely set in stone. It's a dry erase board of MVP ladder for Perk. Ja Morant, great choice, Sap. It was hard for me to leave him. He's off my list, but just barely. It was hard for me to leave him off. For number 4 for me is the guy who won it last year, Nikolay Jokich. The team is fine. They're the 6th seed right now in the West, 33-25. They've obviously dealt with 2 major injuries. Michael Porter Jr. missing the whole season and Jamal Murray so far missing the whole season. And yet they're still rolling, and he's leading the NBA by a wide margin in player efficiency rating, Sap. If you take that stat to heart, he's the best at that. Last year, the year before, every year basically. And this year he is just putting up fantastic statistics, as you would expect. 26 points, 14 rebounds, 8 assists, adding a steal in there too, Sap, per game. I mean, statistically, I don't know what more you could want from anybody.
No, he's playing in some aspects better than last year when he won the MVP, deservedly so. He's right there as well. I don't have him in my top 5, but I think that's to your point that there's probably a dozen guys that you could squeeze into your top 5, right? I mean, even LeBron, who's missed some games but is having a fabulous year, really doesn't get anywhere close to our top 5. Same thing with Durant, because he's now missed about a month. But, those 2 guys are still playing at an extremely high level, and they're not even sniffing the MVP. But, Jokic is obviously one of the best players in the league, so that's a good spot for him at number 4.
All right, Sap, number 3.
Number 3 is DeMar DeRozan, which to me is a shock. I mean, he was okay for 3 years in San Antonio. It was a bad fit. They were trying to get him to fit into their system. It didn't necessarily work in San Antonio. He signs as a free agent with Chicago, and the Bulls are fighting Miami for the best record in the Eastern Conference. DeMar DeRozan just equaled a record that Will Chamberlain set like 60 years ago, scoring 35 points per game or more in 7 straight games, like shooting over 50% in those 7 games each game, which blew my mind. I figure Shaq would have done that at some point, right? 35 or more points, shooting over 50% for 7 straight games. DeMar DeRozan did that, and it's translating into winning. He's doing it quietly like he always does, but man, his offensive game is looking more and more like Kawhi Leonard's, that great mid-range game. He's not a 3-point shooter, but he's very efficient at the 3-point, at the mid-range game. And it's, again, Chicago, along with DeRozan and with Zach LaVine, they're a surprise team in the Eastern Conference. I don't know how far they're going to go in the playoffs, because I still think, Philly, Milwaukee, if Brooklyn gets their act together, Miami might be better teams, but it's been a real fascinating story. So I got DeMar DeRozan at number 3.
Yeah, I think we both have the same top three. I'm not sure about the order, but I have DeRozan at number three as well, Sap. And yeah, I mean, 28, 5-5 this year. He's doing everything. The thing you just talked about with him breaking Wilt's record, and he's hit a bunch of game winners this year.
Yep.
Chicago's obviously elevated. They have they are tied for the best record in the Eastern Conference, 38-21 with the Miami Heat. And obviously he has a lot, if not the most, to do with that. He's the most unlikely MVP candidate since Isaiah Thomas was a couple of years back when he was on the Celtics. And DeRozan has, I think, even more of a case than Thomas did because just the numbers are so overwhelmingly good. And the team wasn't that good last year. He's who I want to win it. I think it would be an awesome story. And typically the MVP of the NBA is, the most reserved for the most elite of elite players. And I don't think anybody's thought of DeMar DeRozan that way. But I mean, Sap, what more does the guy have to do to win an MVP this year?
Yeah, he's been sensational. He really has been. Again, it wasn't a huge free agent contract he signed with the Bulls. I was kind of hoping the Lakers would sign him because I think he would have fit in pretty well with LeBron and Anthony Davis.
I think he wanted to go to the Lakers. Yep. He said that's where he's
wanted
from.
to go to the Lakers. Yeah. Instead, they decided to trade a bunch of players for Russell Westbrook, and the rest is history. And DeRozan seems like such a good guy too, doesn't he? Like he was very popular in Toronto. Probably he and Kyle Lowry still remain the two most popular Raptors ever, along with Vince Carter, obviously, years ago. And you got to put Kawhi in there because the guy did lead them to a championship, but he just seems like a really, really good guy. He's talked about some of his personal issues, which, I think empowers younger people to come out and deal with their own personal issues when a superstar NBA player does that. So easy guy to root for. He's having an MVP caliber season. I just think there's two guys that have kind of separated themselves from everyone else because they really are dominant all over the floor. And I think we agree on who those two guys are, maybe in a different order.
Yeah, I have Giannis at 2 and Embiid at 1. Sap, what about you?
I got him flipped. I got
Okay,
I got Embiid.
I don't think you can go wrong either way, honestly.
No, and maybe it's because I'm pushing back all the time when people are telling me that Durant's the best player in the league. And I'm like, no, Giannis is the best player in the league. Giannis scores as much as Durant. It's done differently. It's not as well, it's efficient because, the other night, what was he, 17 of 21 from the floor? It's like, he's shooting, close to 60% from the floor when he's not taking threes because he's unstoppable. He's a better rebounder than Durant. He's a better passer than Durant. He's
no, if it's an argument for best player in the league, Sap, right. I agree with you. It's Giannis.
Yeah.
For
the defensive end too.
Yeah.
Right, defensive end. And Embiid's awesome. I mean, Embiid is absolutely, and I can't wait to see Harden with Embiid because I think that's going to work terrifically in Philadelphia. A lot of people think it might blow up. I think it's going to work really well because I think they'll play along each other really well. I'm just going with Giannis only because I think he's the best player. He won the championship a year ago, and here we are. He's come back, and he seems like he's even better. So I give him a slight edge over Embiid, but at this point, I think it's a toss-up between those two great players.
Yeah, I think the best thing that's happened to Embiid's MVP candidacy is Ben Simmons. The whole Ben Simmons saga and the crazy amount of distractions that have gone with it, and the fact that Embiid hasn't been able to play with the guy who's the second best player in the team, and yet they still have a great record, 35-23, third place in the East. Embiid deserves basically all the credit for that because he's been so dominant that Philadelphia has been able to not just stay afloat, but been at the top of the East for a while. So I know the Bucks have also dealt with injuries. To Middleton and Holiday have both missed time, and Lopez hasn't played at all this season. And so Giannis, has helped pace them too. But Philadelphia, as it stands right now, has a small lead in the winning percentage column over Milwaukee. And I feel like Embiid's had less to play with. So I'm going to give Embiid the slight nod there, Sap, but it could change. It could change next week. I don't think Embiid has separated himself enough from Giannis. And I think if Harden comes in and plays really well, I kind of feel like that hurts Embiid's candidacy a little bit. What do you think?
No, it could. Yeah. Cause then people will say, well, look at, you really took off with Harden, and the Sixers won 15 of their last 20 and they became the number one seed. The thing is, this is always about a story, the narrative. And Embiid, if he had played the bulk of the games last year, probably would have been MVP or would have been closer with Jokic. And I think now it's Embiid's time to win the MVP. It almost feels like the Oscars. Sometimes it's okay. It's Al Pacino's turn
Right.
to win Best Actor. Maybe it's not the greatest performance. So Embiid, it's his time to win. Giannis has won it twice. Look, he deserves to win it again. I believe he's the best player in the league. And I don't even think it's close. I really don't, because on the defensive end, I mean, Durant and LeBron are still awesome, but on the defensive end, they're not Giannis. And Giannis brings it every night. He's younger. He's healthier. He's hungrier.
You could make a case that he's the best post defender and the best perimeter defender in the NBA.
That's crazy. No, I mean, he's sensational. And again, I think that some people push back a little bit because it's not the prettiest to watch at times on offense, because it's him going to the basket so much. It almost has a similar feel, not with quite the power, but with more athleticism than Shaq had.
He's Shaq. He's
Shaq. It's unstoppable. It's like, okay, there's really nothing we can do. This guy, and he's relentless. And the thing is, and I remember we talked about this before the season, sometimes when a guy breaks through and wins a championship, it empowers him to do even greater things. It's like now the pressure is off. He's a champion. He's not Charles Barkley or Karl Malone, two all-time great players who never were able to win a championship. He's now a champion. Now you're going to see his game flourish even more, right? You would think that would happen with some quarterbacks. Maybe we'll see that next year with Matt Stafford. He wins the Super Bowl and becomes even better. So with Giannis, I think we've seen that. He is not rested on his laurels. He's better now than ever. He's shooting better at the free throw line. He's still a disaster from three. I wish he really didn't take threes because he's not very good at it. But the rest of the game is just incredible. Look at the assist numbers, Jet. I mean, he's setting up guys and making those around him better. And Middleton and Holiday, let's not forget, as soon as they won the championship last year, they were on a plane to Tokyo to play in the Olympics. I mean, they had no off season, so they've had to kind of ease their way back into things. I still think they're the team to beat in the Eastern Conference as long as Giannis is he's that good.
Well, Sap, look at Embiid and Giannis's numbers. I mean, they're separated by a razor's edge. Embiid scoring 29.6. Giannis is scoring 29.4. Embiid's getting 11.2 rebounds per game. Giannis is getting 11.2 rebounds per game. Embiid's averaging 1.4 blocks a game. Giannis is averaging 1.4 blocks a game. They each average a steal a game. Where Giannis separates himself a little bit is he's averaging 6 assists. Embiid is averaging 4.5, which is, for a center is pretty damn good.
Yeah. Well, Shaq used to average some assists too. Shaq was an underrated passer. I think Embiid has such a great game because he can face the basket and he can hit threes and he can do so many things, put the ball on the floor, which is
how
scary.
about this, Sep? Embiid shooting a higher percentage from three, Giannis shooting a higher percentage from the floor.
Yeah.
You can't, I mean, again, if there was ever a case right now for co-MVPs, these guys,
yeah.
I mean, really, there's nothing separating them right now.
You know what, Jet? It might come down to which team finishes higher than the other in the Eastern
very well
Conference.
might.
That's the difference. Yeah, I mean, if Philly ends up the number one seed again, it might hurt a little bit because of Harden. But then you also have to give Embiid some credit if Harden works out, because Harden's not the easiest guy to play with either. He seems like he has these problems with whoever he's played with. So maybe Embiid is, and I think Embiid's the guy that if Harden starts acting up, Embiid will say something. Like if Harden goes missing for a day and a half in Atlantic City or wherever the hell he's going, I don't think that's really his style, more Vegas. But, Embiid will probably say, hey, he wasn't here tonight because he was late getting to the game because he was in Vegas. Embiid has no filter, which I love. I absolutely love because, he's great material for what we do. But yeah, it would be a pretty cool Eastern Conference Finals too, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. And to see those guys kind of go at it. They kind of play each other. Not necessarily all the time, but that would be a fascinating battle. And again, two players who would have represented the world if you had the world all-star game. And again, I think that would be a fascinating thing to see at some point.
Yeah. Right now, Milwaukee 36-24, Philadelphia 35-23, separated by 0.03 in the winning percentage margin. So again, the teams are neck and neck, just as the two players are. Sap, which leads us into our last discussion of the day. The top 5 teams in the NBA right now. We've been talking a lot about the Eastern Conference lately because of how exciting the playoff race is shaping up to be, and every team is really, really close. And yet the West has the teams with the 3 best records, Sap. So how do you see this? If we're just limiting ourselves to 5, how do you see the top 5 playing out?
Kind of like the MVP, Jet, right? There's like 13 teams that you could say, well, they're almost top 5, right? Because if you look at the standings, not just the East, not just the West, but the entire league, the 4th best record to the 13th best record. So that's 10 teams. Only 5 games separate those 10 teams. That's fascinating. I mean, look
That
at
is
the Celtics.
fascinating. And I think too,
Celtics,
you can't, you don't want to project right now too. So like at full health, Brooklyn could be one of the best teams,
sure,
but they aren't right now. So I don't think
right.
you can, we'll throw them out.
And they're not even in the top 13, but we do think that, Durant comes back, Simmons fits in, Kyrie on the road, that they'll still be a tough out. Yeah, so 5 games separate the 4th best to the 13th best team in the league. And again, we're 3/4 of the way through the season. This isn't December. We're into late February. So number 5 for me will be the 76ers. Again, Embiid. And I'm also playing a little bit of looking forward because I think Harden will come back after the All-Star break, and I think he's going to fit in. I really do. It's going to be a 2-month finish to the regular season. Then we're into the postseason. Whatever issues he has, and he seems to have them wherever he plays, I think this is going to be such a short period of time that it's going to work out well. So I got the 76ers at number 5.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. I am just going to wait a little bit to reserve judgment on how the Harden pairing works out. I agree with you. I think it will work, but I'll hold off for right now, and I'll put Memphis at number 5. Slight better record than Philadelphia. I do think that playoffs might be a struggle for them because they're, so new, though they did get experience in it last year, which is, I think, helpful and has helped propel them this year. But I will say Memphis right now.
I have Memphis at number 4. They're 41-19, 3rd best record. Ja Morant's an MVP candidate. The games he's missed, they've continued to play well, but don't they seem more like a regular season team, like you said, that they could get bounced in the first round if they're the 3 seed in the
They
West,
do until they prove they're not.
Exactly. I mean, if the Lakers sneak into the 6th seed, maybe the Lakers, I don't know. I don't even want to go there because Anthony Davis.
Yeah, we could do the Lakers like another day. So.
Yeah. The Lakers aren't anywhere
it's
near
my gift
this.
to you.
Thank you. Yeah, some other day we'll talk about the Lakers. But what Memphis has done this year is fascinating. But again, it kind of has the feel of more of a regular season accomplishment that you get to the playoffs. If they can win a round, then they're playing probably Golden State in the second round. That'd be a difficult series for Memphis, but they do play defense, and that's something
and they beat Golden State last year in the play-in.
They did. They beat them in the play-in, and they were competitive for a while in the postseason. And look, Ja Morant, he just has the it factor that he's going to go down fighting. Even if he's down 2-1, he's not going to lay down. He's a competitor. But I got Memphis at number 4.
Well, Sap, they're sort of the great unknown, right? Because a lot of these teams we've seen a million Golden State Warriors series. We've seen the Suns make a deep run last year. We know what Utah is going to do. They'll flame out in the postseason. So in terms of the West, I think people are kind of waiting to see, okay, is this Memphis team legitimate, or are they a regular season team like Utah, or are they a team that could surge in the playoffs like the Hawks did last year? Because, they're youth and they kind of don't know any better. And are they going to play with no fear? So they're really interesting to see, Sap. At number 4 for me, I have the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. That doesn't mean I think that's where they'll necessarily end up. But right now, I think they're the 4th best team in the league. They could use to get healthier. And I think that for them, especially coming off of a championship, Sap, seeding isn't as important as it was the past couple of years. And I don't see a team in the East that has a distinct, strong home court advantage. So I would say the Bucks. Things are shaping up very, very well for them. But right now, 5th best record in the East. So I'll put them 4th in the NBA.
Okay. Number 3 for me is Golden State, 42-17. And the amazing thing about Golden State, I mean, we didn't put this player into MVP discussion because his numbers aren't that great. But you look at Golden State, with Draymond Green, they're 28-6. That's an 82% winning percentage. Without Draymond Green, 14-11, 56% winning percentage. When you have a lot of bricks and you're trying to build a building, you need cement to hold all those bricks together. Draymond Green is the cement of the Golden State Warriors. There's so much better with him because of his defense, his intangibles. He's also the guy you run your offense through. He may be their best passer. Does a great job screening for Curry and eventually will for Klay Thompson when Draymond comes back. So that's a big difference. But I got Golden State at number 3. I like the way they develop players too. Like you said, Andrew Wiggins is playing the best he's ever played. Jonathan Kuminga looks like a guy who's going to be a factor in the postseason just because of his defense. So I think they're going to be a
Jordan
tough
Poole. They've done a great job developing him.
Yeah.
Gary Payton Jr. or Gary Payton II. You know, he's become from a guy who was in the G League to a guy who, you know, plays a role on their team. And no, they're terrific developing players. Sap. They're great at it.
They've kind of taken over what San Antonio used to do,
Agreed.
which is develop players and continue to, like, Kuminga. There's some aspects of Kuminga's game that remind me of Kawhi Leonard. I'm not saying he's going to be Kawhi Leonard, but on the defensive end, he's already a problem for teams. He's just, you know, the 8th or 9th guy on the team. They're going to be tough to deal with.
Yeah, they're terrific at developing players, and I think, you know, just as I praise Steph Curry for helping unlock Andrew Wiggins, I think Draymond Green deserves as much credit too. Curry is a pretty good facilitator, but Green's the best facilitator in that team.
He is.
And yeah, no, he's terrific. No problem with them there. At number 3 for me, I have the top team in the Eastern Conference right now, the Miami Heat. They are, for a team that plays in Miami, very quiet and under the radar. To have the best record in the East. I love how this team is built, and I think they're built for the postseason. You know, they have a lot of veteran players on it. And then they got a guy like Tyler Hero that can, you know, that's got a lot of life left in the legs and can fill in when those guys have to miss time or don't have it, you know, the wind in their sails that night. But I mean, guys like Butler and Lowry, those are guys who want to win and are chasing, you know, and Lowry's chasing his second ring. Butler's chasing his first. You got PJ Tucker who won last year. You know, you have that is a good squad with a lot of good players on it.
Yeah, before the season started, I said Miami, Milwaukee, Eastern Conference Finals. I'll stick with that. I have them out of my top 5. I've seen them slip up a little bit, but they're right there. I mean, you know, if we did this exercise in 2 weeks, they could be 3rd for all I know. They're outstanding. You know, let's make a case. Eric Spoelstra, Ty Lue, probably the 2 best coaches in the league. Monty Williams right up there as well. I mean, obviously Popovich we kind of put to the side, kind of like Belichick. Like, let's not compare other coaches to him because he's legendary. But Eric Spoelstra is a great coach. They have that culture that they built. They play defense. Yeah, and they're a fascinating team. You're right. A Miami team that doesn't get overrated or too much traction, and they've got guys that, you know, want to win, know how to win. They're going to be a tough out in the Eastern Conference. That's why the Eastern Conference playoffs, you know, you could have whoever is the 7 seed, Toronto, playing Miami in the first round, and that could be a 6 or 7 game series because Toronto has kind of that same culture. Number 2 for me is Milwaukee, and again, not a great record, 36-24. They have the best player, the defending champs. I think when they need to, they show up and play well because they play defense. That's in their DNA. But again, they've somewhat underperformed this year, but I think part of it is the injuries to Middleton and Drew Holiday. And again, a very short off season, winning the championship, and those 2 guys going to the Olympics. I expect them to start really catching fire the final 6-7 weeks. I have them at number 2.
Oh, on Sap, I think a little bit of coasting too, because, you know, it's not as urgent that they, you know, like I said, the seeding doesn't matter as much. You know, there's no LeBron in the East anymore. I know he wasn't there the past couple of years, but that doesn't matter. There's just the home court advantage doesn't seem to matter as much anymore. But I think Milwaukee is certainly capable of winning it all again. So I have no problem with you putting them there. And we both have the same number 1 team. I don't think anybody could deny. Right? Yeah, the Suns. I have the Warriors at 2, Sap, for what it's worth. We've talked about them at length already, so I don't need to. But yeah, it's the Suns. They have the best record in the NBA, 48-10. They are just as good at home as they are on the road, Sap. 26-5 at home, 22-5 on the road. They've had the NBA's longest win streak this year. They're a machine right now. The only thing you could say that worries you about them is, I guess, Chris Paul's age, but he doesn't look like he's slowing down. And that's about it. I don't really know what other holes you could poke in them.
No, it seems like a perfectly constructed team, right, Jet? Because you old school. You got the real true point guard, the floor general, and Chris Paul. Devin Booker is like a perfect 2 guard, has that mid-range game, but he has that mid-range game. DeAndre Ayton's more of a classic center. I've compared him to Robert Parrish. And then you got Bridges and Crowder and Johnson and all these other guys that just go out there and play fantastic basketball. Monty Williams, one of the best coaches in the league, and they play together and they play defense. I'm shocked. I'll be honest with you. I thought they'd be a 5 or 6 seed because when you lose a tough finals like they did last year, you generally come back a little flat. Well, they've come back better.
Yeah, it's at the beginning of the year, we picked a team from each conference to, who we thought would be disappointing, and we nailed the Eastern Conference with the Knicks.
Right.
We did not nail the Western Conference. The Suns have exceeded expectations.
No, and I think that's why you got to put Chris Paul somewhat into the MVP conversation. His numbers aren't overly great, but he's a leader of that team, and I think it really filters to Booker, Ayton, and the rest of those players. And let's just give a little shout out to Jay Crowder. It just seems like wherever he goes, the team plays better, right? I mean, the Celtics had success.
No, he's the winner.
I mean, the Celtics had success here. He goes to Miami. They make it to the finals. He goes to the finals last year with Phoenix. He's an irritating type player, but you need guys like that. He'll get in people's faces, not afraid that he's not going to back down to LeBron. No, I mean, give the guy credit. He's a real solid pro. And I think the Celtics missed someone like that. But again, you had the opportunity to get Kyrie Irving, so you go ahead and make that move.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great fit on that team. Mikal Bridges is a guy that's talked about his potential, one of the top defensive players in the NBA. So he fits in really well. We both lauded Cam Johnson last year. We like his game. We like campaign. I think under the radar move step, we talked about a little bit in the offseason. JaVale McGee is just a great fit for this team because
Perfect.
If Ayton misses time, he could start for him and be a reasonable facsimile. And what killed them in the finals was they had no answer for Giannis at all.
Right.
And Ayton just was overwhelmed and he had no backup big. It was Kaminsky and because Saric was out. And so with the experience, a championship experience of McGee and the fact he's still a good player, I think that's really helped them a lot. And I think McGee is going to pay big dividends in the postseason for them.
Mm-hmm. Another guy who just wins, right? Won 2 championships with the Warriors, won one with the Lakers. That kind of happens, right? I mean, I don't think it's by accident. They know the little things that take place for a team to win. And again, they needed that backup center last year because Ayton, I think, just wore down and couldn't deal with Giannis. Not that anyone can, but at least you have a capable backup who can give you 12, 14 minutes a night like JaVale McGee. Phoenix will be that much better for it. They've been fantastic this year. I'm shocked that they're 48-10, headed for like a 66 win season.
Yeah. And, obviously the pressure is on Chris Paul to win his first championship as a career sort of cherry on top of the career. That's the one thing he lacks. And they're certainly primed to win it this year. There's no team that's played better than them. And they have, I think, all the pieces in place to win it. So that's the expectation in Phoenix is championship or bust.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's there for them. They look like they'll have home court advantage throughout. They can win on the road. They have it all. They should have all the answers.
Yep. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We will be talking about the All-Star game, probably recapping it next week, talking about what goes down, anything interesting, and maybe a couple other shows about things we want to change in the NBA, as you mentioned, Sap, but there's always plenty to go around. The NBA is never short on news. So make sure you check out the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, wherever podcasts are found, or on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. And follow our social medias for all the latest updates and cool poll questions like Sap had yesterday for Michael Jordan's birthday. What's the better birthday tandem, Michael Jordan and Jim Brown, or LeBron James and Tiger Woods? I know how I voted. I know how Sap voted. But I'm curious.
You know what? You could put Michael Jordan and my Aunt Teresa on the same birthday day and he would still win. That's the thing that infuriates me about Michael Jordan. It's like Michael Jordan and 4 stiffs could have beaten the 86 Celtics. Well, actually, Michael Jordan and 4 stiffs got swept by the 86 Celtics. Now, Jordan did have 63 in game 2, 49 in game 1. He was fantastic. But no matter what you do, I think it's a pretty interesting one because, LeBron and Michael to be the 2 greatest players ever. And Jim Brown's the 2nd greatest football player ever behind only Tom Brady. Tiger's the second greatest golfer behind Jack Nicklaus. So I think it's pretty interesting. The other thing is, I believe Sandy Koufax was also born on the same date as LeBron and Tiger Woods, December 30th. I mean, that would kind of put them to the top with Sandy Koufax.
Yeah, but like you said, even if some bum was born on Michael Jordan's birthday, if you just put him on the list too. Yeah, so
he'd win somehow. Yeah, that's going to happen. We got to find out if there's another great athlete born on whatever it was, August 3rd for Tom Brady. We'll have to see if there's anybody on that. Yeah, it's a pretty good combo.
That's a good one. Brady and whoever. It doesn't matter.
Whoever, yeah.
All right, Sap. So enjoy the All-Star break, and we will be back with a new show next week. Again, search for the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jed and Sap wherever podcasts are found. Thanks to Full Press Coverage, and we'll talk to you later. See you, everybody.